Okay, so this evening we're going to talk about the Fitrah, and what we'll do to start with is a summary of the Fitrah. So the Fitrah, or Fitrah with an H, is an Arabic word that has no exact English equivalent, although it has been translated as primordial human nature and as instinct or common sense. According to Islamic theology, human beings are born with an innate inclination of tawhid, oneness, which is encapsulated in the Fitrah, along with compassion, intelligence, Ishan, and all other attributes that embody what it is to be human. I do notice there they don't sort of talk about any of the negative attributes. It clearly only seems to relate to positive attributes. So here's the argument for the Fitrah by somebody most of us know, Hamza Tsortzis, and it's in a form of a syllogism. For those that don't know, that's generally a number of premises and a conclusion. So number one, if God does not exist, the Fitrah does not exist. Premise 2, the Fitrah exists. Conclusion, therefore God exists. So we'll go through this now and see what explanation he has for that, and we can discuss it further afterwards. Explaining premise 1. This is everything in black is what's Hamza Tsortzis written, and everything in red is either my response that I've got or quoted from other people. So explaining premise 1. The existence of the Fitrah can only be explained by God's existence, as the Fitrah cannot be explained via social pressure or biology. It's a very strong claim. The innate disposition to believe in God has no evolutionary forerunner, and it transcends social pressures. Social pressure is not an adequate explanation for the Fitrah, as many children across various cultures display the natural inclination to believe in God. As Dr. Justin Barrett, a senior researcher at the University of Oxford Centre for Anthropology and Mind, states, quote, "If we threw a handful on an island and they raised themselves, I think they would believe in God," unquote. Dr. Barrett also states, quote, "The preponderance of scientific evidence for the past 10 years or so has shown that a lot more seems to be built into the natural development of children's minds than we once thought, including a predisposition to see the natural world as designed and purposeful, and that some kind of intelligent being is behind that purpose," unquote. So in regards to the Fitrah that cannot be explained via social pressure or biology, and the claim that no evolutionary forerunner and it transcends social pressures, these are very strong claims and need a very strong arguments which aren't evident, since they basically assert that it's impossible to explain the Fitrah by any other means other than asserting the God explanation. So obviously what we've got here is certain very strong claims. Now imagine I said it cannot be explained via God. Now, I would need to give very good justifications for that, and of course, we're not getting that. Now, also the claim with many children across various cultures display the natural inclination to believe in God. Again, this claim needs to be supported, because if it's solely based on Olivia Petrovich's work, she looked at children over the age of 3 in Western theism and in Japan, which would hardly constitute various cultures. So what does Professor A.C. Grayling have to say about Justin L. Barrett? So obviously I've taken a little bit of this from my video in his article, Children of God. But Barrett and his friends infer that from the first half of these unexceptional facts, that children are hardwired to believe in a supreme being. Not only does this ignore the evidence of developmental psychology about the second stage of cognitive maturation, but is in itself a very big and obviously hopeful jump indeed, unquote. Quote, "Moreover, it ignores the fact that large tracts of humankind, the Chinese for numerous example, have no beliefs in a supernatural being, innate or learned." Barrett and his friends say that children are hardwired to believe that nature is designed. This Barrett infers, apparently by asking small children such questions as, "Why is the stone pointed?" It does not seem to have occurred to him that the semantics of why questions are such that they demand an explanation in terms of reasons or causes in response. A.C. Grayling goes on to say, "The Templeton Foundation is rich. It offers a very large prize money to any scientist or philosopher who will say things friendly to religion, and it supports research, as described above, into anything that will add credibility and respectability to religion." So we need to be a little bit cautious of anything that's funded by the Templeton Foundation. Generally speaking, and in my experience having looked through this, they generally fund people who are very friendly, either are theists already or extremely friendly towards theism, so they can make this sort of link between science and religion. Justin L. Barrett then responded to Grayling and said, quote, "Had Grayling attended the seminar as Brown did or read my book, Why Would Anyone Believe in God?, he would know that I do not say that religion is hardwired or innate. Rather, the children have propensities to believe in gods because of how their minds naturally work." So there's a big difference between being hardwired or innate and having a propensity. And here Justin Barrett states it himself in the article. Let's move on to explaining premise 2. There are many reasons why the Fitrah exists. Some of these include revelation. The Quran and the Sunnah mention the concept of the Fitrah. The reasons why the Fitrah exists and the revelation of the Quran and the Sunnah that mention the concept. I want to get clear here, and obviously I'm open for somebody to challenge me. In my view, the Quran is a book of claims, not evidence of anything. The Quran is not the reason why the Fitrah supposedly exists. It simply claims that the Fitrah exists. The Fitrah could exist in theory, whether the Quran did or not. So revelation is not a reason, it's just a claim. Let's move on to his next reason, which is social historical. Throughout time, every society has had its people sanctify and revere something higher than them. Even communist societies portrayed such traits. Any look at the communist statues and people's reverence for figures such as Lenin indicate this. Here's a study. I'll post the link afterwards if people are interested. It's on screen, but if you want a clickable link, here's a study that explains why that might be the case. And here's a little part out of this. Another experiment confirmed that one means of re-establishing control is to believe in the existence of externally controlling God. The experiment tested levels of religious belief before and after a task, in which they asked people to remember past events that they had no control over. After the test, belief in God as a controlling entity increased. So as I say, I'll post this link afterwards, and then you can have a look into this as to there are reasons why people will believe, natural reasons that have nothing to do with God per se. Additionally, people were not educated about the natural world as we are today, and as studies show, people attribute teleology to mysteries, which very often is replaced with a scientific, naturalistic explanation as noted below. Quote, "No matter what their religious beliefs, college-educated adults frequently agree with purpose-seeking yet false explanations of natural phenomena. For example, finches diversified in order to survive, for instance." And again, there's a link to the New Scientist article. So then another reason is psychological. So Bruce Hood, a professor of developmental psychology at Bristol University, stated, quote, "Our research shows that children have a natural, intuitive way of reasoning that leads them to all kinds of supernatural beliefs about how the world works," unquote. And our good friend Dr. Olivia Petrovich, according to Olivia Petrovich, an expert in psychology of religion, belief in God is not taught but develops naturally, unquote. So Professor Hood, when I looked this up, Professor Hood is a psychologist at Bristol University, as mentioned, believes that religion is similar to children's belief in imaginary friends. This is rather telling. Quote, "Our research shows that children have a natural, intuitive way of reasoning that leads them to all kinds of supernatural beliefs about how the world works," he said. As they grow up, they overlay these beliefs with more rational approaches, but the tendency to illogical, supernatural beliefs remains as religion. So I'm not sure he's the best person to quote for such a thing. Hood is convinced that superstitious beliefs are inevitable and even beneficial to humans. For example, he argues that essentialism is beneficial to social interactions since it allows humans to overcome objectification and attribute uniqueness to other humans. However, Hood clearly differentiates between secular and religious beliefs, where secular supernatural beliefs are universally applicable across cultures and religious beliefs are culturally specific. So I read that people will believe in something, quote, supernatural, be it a ghost, a gaseous form or whatever the case is. That may well be, and we're not entirely sure. And in fact, I will come across something a little bit later on that will put this in doubt in any case. But there's the link if you want to read a bit more about this fella, because I hadn't heard of him before. And here's my good friend, or not, Olivia Petrovich, who's a Christian, not an atheist, was interviewed and said, quote, "I've also established that children's natural concepts of God aren't purely anthropomorphic. They certainly acquire a concept a conception of God as man through their religious education, but no child actually links the representation of, for example, God as Jesus with the creator of the world. Rather, their images of God, the creator, correspond with abstract notions like gas, air, and a person without a body. In an interview with SNS, I think it's Spiritual and something, the interviewer asked, from your research, do you think it's possible that the inclination towards religion or spirituality is universal? And Petrovich answers, quote, I think possibly is the precise word to use here. I can't be more certain than that because I have only worked with children aged 3.5 upward, and that's already an old age when it comes to basic understandings, some of which are in evidence in the first year of their life. Moving on to the philosophical, which in my view is the only or the last refuge for anybody with religious beliefs. The belief in God can be considered as a properly basic belief that requires no rational justification, just like the assumption for scientific naturalism that the external world exists is a properly basic belief that cannot be proven. I know. I'll go through this now. I reject both of those, but we'll talk about that now. In modern foundationalism, which was what was quoted, philosophical theories of knowledge resting upon justified beliefs are held to be properly basic if they are either a self-evident axiom or incorrigible. Incorrigibility is a property of a philosophical proposition which implies that it is necessarily true simply by virtue of being believed. A common example of such a proposition is René Descartes' cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. In Reformed epistemology, beliefs are held to be properly basic if they are reasonable and consistent with a sensible view of the world. And this is what Tsortzis appears to be borrowing from in his attempting to argue for God as a properly basic belief. I would reject the properly basic belief and refer to modern foundationalism, which said another way is only self-attesting beliefs like I think therefore I am or the laws of logic are views that I would hold as properly basic. So somebody comes to me with a properly basic belief of God exists or that the world around us, the scientific world view is a properly basic. I would reject both of those because when I looked into this self-attesting, so when I say self-attesting, what I mean is in order for them to be false, they have to be assumed. So like our existence, like the laws of logic, when we open our mouth and have a conversation, we assume the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity, the law of excluded middle. We can't have a rational conversation without assuming those laws of logic exist. And so they are what I would term, or not my term, actually somebody else's, self-attesting. They are true. They are assumed to be true even in order to be talked about or to try to falsify it, you have to assume them to be true. So this view of properly basic belief, which is actually borrowed from Alvin Plantinga, so it's a lot more advanced than what Tsortzis probably understands or knows, I would reject that on its face, and I think most non-believers would as well. So another reason that Tsortzis gives for supporting his premises is developmental. Professor Paul Bloom, a psychologist at Yale University in Connecticut, whose department has studied morality in babies for years, said, quote, a growing body of evidence suggests that humans do have a rudimentary moral sense from the very start of life. With the help of well-designed experiments, you can see glimmers of moral thought, moral judgment, and moral feeling even in the first year of life. Some sense of good and evil seems to be bred into the bones. What can we infer from Professor Paul Bloom's studies? Well, we can infer that young children have a rudimentary moral sense of morality. That tells us nothing about the origins of such morality. In my view, this isn't an argument for the Fitrah unless Tsortzis can establish that no other position can account for morality apart from a belief in God, with all the issues that entails. So if you're putting this forward as a reason, then and you're claiming that it is, then you have to rule out every other possibility, because if there is some other possible origin of this morality, then of course you have a competing reason, and then it's very much even more in question. Moving on to the final one, which is not really premise 3, I would say it's conclusion 3. I took this straight from what he's written. God is the best explanation for the existence of the Fitrah, as God is the only concept, note the only concept, that can comprehensively explain humanity's natural inclination for the belief in him. Social pressures fail to provide any explanation, as studies with cross-cultural variables have shown that the Fitrah is constant. Also, evolution fails to provide an adequate explanation, as the concept of God has no link to survival and reproduction.
Yes, how many lies are in just this short paragraph?
Yeah, and they're all assertions, basically, aren't they? And here's the first one. Quote, God is the only concept that can comprehensively explain humanity's natural inclination for the belief in him. And my response is this needs to be argued for, not just asserted. And this is the big thing I notice with Tortoise and obviously Sabur, etc., is that they assert things. And if they give a nice story and they sound very certain, then people don't ask them to justify it. In order to show that God is the only concept, he needs to provide an argument that it is impossible for anything else to explain the supposed natural inclination, which, as we've seen, is a dubious claim. So for him to say, as soon as he says the word only, if he said it's a possible concept or it's a likely concept, that's a different story. Even that still needs to be justified, of course. But the moment he says it's the only concept, now he takes on a burden of proof that is tremendous, because you're now ruling out everything, even things you've never heard of. And this is one thing I'm very cautious of saying only, or it's the best, or whatever the case is, because you haven't ruled out, or how do you even know if somebody else has got the truth in some other version of a worldview you've never heard of? So you've got to be very careful about doing this. But again, of course, this is not designed for people who are looking at this, I think, possibly as critically as we are. It sounds good to most people on a first reading. Quote, the social pressures fail to provide any explanation, as studies with cross-cultural variables have shown that the Fitrah is constant. No, the cross-cultural variables have not shown this, and all we need is one group of people that show that no natural inclination, and then the claim would be falsified. So I don't think I've written that correctly, but basically what I'm saying is all we need is a group of people that we can demonstrate do not have this innate or natural inclination, and that would falsify this claim. And I present to you the Pariah people, I think I pronounced that correctly, Pariah people of Amazon. The Pariahs believed that the world was as it has always been, and there was no supreme deity. Furthermore, they had no creation myths in their culture. In short, here was a people who were more than happy to live their lives without God, religion, or any political authority.
Well, despite they don't even have a word. They don't even have a word for a deity.
Correct. Yes, you know all of this. I'm preaching to the converted. You obviously know all of these things already. Despite Everett translating the book of Luke into Pariah. Now, Everett was a Christian evangelical who traveled to the Amazon to visit these pariahs in the 70s. I think it was the 60s or 70s. And then obviously wanted to bring the word of God from a Christian point of view. And he translated the book, and reading it to the tribal members, the pariah sensibly resisted all his attempts to convert them. There's a link to it as well. And in fact, he actually deconverted after his trip to the pariahs. Not straight away, didn't do it there and then, but apparently he got more and more doubtful, and in the mid-80s he became an atheist, very much because of his visit to this tribe. So here we've got a tribe who's clearly got no view of this, and for me this is the nail in the coffin, because in order for the Fitrah to be true, you would have to demonstrate that every group or people across the world have got this innate. If it isn't, now you're in trouble. So the claim is that everybody from a baby upwards has got this innate, is born as a Muslim, as we've heard before. And here's a group of people who don't have that at all, that has never been, prior to this fellow visiting them, have not had that outside contact with people like this. So they have no view of God whatsoever. Moving on, here's 7 reasons why it's easier for humans to believe in God. And there's the link. I won't go into them because this could take ages, but if people are interested, I'll go to the page, bring it up, and we could go through them. And these are 7 reasons why people, and it's related to evolution as well.
Hello, Rob. Can I share one point, please?
Just wait till I'm finished this, if you won't mind. Just mute yourself. As soon as I'm finished this, then you're welcome to jump in. I just want to get through the rest of this, and then you can jump in. So here's 7 reasons why it's easier for humans to believe in God. Number 1, biological essentialism. You need to look that up. Teleological thinking. Overactive agent detection. That's a big one. Dualism. the inability to comprehend vast timescales, group morality and tribalism, fear and the need for certainty. So I do encourage you to get that link. I will post it. And as I say, if people are interested, I'll bring that up on screen and we can read through it. But here's 7 reasons, because oftentimes I'm asked, are there, what reasons are there for humans believing in God? Oh, you guys haven't got any naturalistic reasons. Well, here's 7 of them. Now, whether they're all true, that's a different story, but there are reasons that we can investigate. So to claim that we've got no reasons is not true. So Tortzes finishes with, this axiomatic argument rests on the view that an innate disposition exists and that it can be proven, and there are good, and that if it can be proven, there are good reasons to conclude that God exists, as how else can an inclination to believe and worship an immaterial being be justified, which is an argument from ignorance, but we'll talk more about that later. It is best explained by God creating this within us. My response, I think it's fair to say that the innate disposition cannot be justified using the reasons and evidence, in inverted commas, supplied by the Muslim apologists, as we've seen. We've also seen no arguments for the impossibility of naturalism or an other worldview, or that God is the only explanation, only assertions. Even if the innate disposition was actually true, all we've heard is the assertion that God is the only one, and no argument to support that, or no argument to say naturalism is impossible. So thank you very much, and I look forward to questions and discussions. Ayub, feel free to jump in.
Okay, hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to address that the Fitrah, or the natural disposition, was actually proven by the University of Oxford, and they concluded that every single human being is born with the natural or the innate disposition in believing in God or in believing in a creator. And I can send you the link to read about this. It was conducted, it was proven to be correct.
Please do send me the link, because I have read that and it's been proven not to be correct.
Absolutely. I can send you one.
We've just talked about this. This is exactly what we were just
I'm telling you, no. Stop. They brought like 5 children, and they asked, I don't know exactly what happened, but I can send you the link.
You don't know exactly. You don't know exactly what happened. You don't know what happened. This is
fine.
We're talking about.
Okay. I don't know exactly what happened, but I can read to you what they have written here. We
all know this. We know the claims. We have all shown that this is nonsense.
This is not a claim. This is a fact which was proven by them.
No, it wasn't.
I'm telling you, I can read it to you now.
Read it then. Go ahead.
Okay. Children were asked, one of the studies from Oxford concluded that children below the age of 5 found it easier to believe in some superhuman or higher power or whatever. Children were asked whether their mother would know the content of a closed box. 3 years olds believed that their mother and God would always know the contents. But the age of 4, children start to understand that their mother were not omniscient. So that means they started to understand that a human being is not omniscient, and they have started understanding that it could be some higher power.
Marshall,
so
Marshall, what are you doing? You're just reading a text where somebody makes, this is precisely what Rob just said. You are reading a text where somebody makes assertions.
Stop. Please, would you do me a favor?
They say in the beginning that there is a study which proves this. Where is the study?
Rob, okay, would you just do me a small favor and read the article I'm going to send you now, okay?
I have read that one already.
Please.
I've read that already.
Which one?
The one that you've just said. That I've read that exact article, and so is Stops. We've read that article before.
We've refuted it. We've debunked it. We've ridiculed it years ago.
How is it? You're saying it was debunked. How is it debunked? And that is a fact which you can read now.
It's a lie.
How is it a lie? That's your claim. That's your subjective opinion.
No, I have proven that it is a lie. I have done this many, many times in many, many videos, shown that this is a lie. You are only reading assertions.
Look, you don't need to take what those experts say. You can just simply bring 5 years old kid and someone who has not been influenced by the environment or the culture, and ask him whether there is a creator, and I would guarantee you that he would say yes.
Okay, I didn't.
But I said you can do it by yourself.
I did it.
So what? So you did it. So what was the result?
I didn't say there is a creator. I never did this.
No, I said to you, I said you can conduct the experiment by yourself. Just bring 5 years old a kid and ask him, is it possible for a creator to exist? And he would not say no. He would.
I did.
And what did you conclude?
There is no creator.
So the kid which you brought said no, there's no creator.
No, I did. I was the kid.
No. That's not. I'm telling you. Bring
Marshall,
up a child.
you don't understand what you're doing. You don't understand what you're doing. We have just shown. Rob has just 2 seconds ago shown that there is there's an entire tribe which doesn't even have the concept of God. The children do not know what a God is. So nobody in the tribe understands what a God is. They do not have a creator. Right. They don't have this. This is what we have just told you.
They don't have to believe in God, because the concept of God, it has a lot of connotations. But what I'm saying to you is, they could believe in some supreme being, some higher power that could exist there.
I can't believe this.
It is
not. Don't you listen when Rob? I mean, it's on the screen. It was here on the screen. Don't you read? Don't you listen to what he says? No, they do not.
The tribe. I know. It's not. I'm saying they don't have to, because if you said those people must know or must acknowledge the term or the concept of God, it's not that. It's they could believe in some higher power.
No, they don't believe in higher powers.
So how do you know that?
Fucking hell, we just had this on the screen. There's an entire book about this. I can't believe this. It was on the screen a few seconds ago. This is what was just presented. I've shown this in many videos. Essence of Thought has shown this on minimum 1 video. We've done this. We've been there. It has been done, refuted. It's killed. It's gone. It's finished. Why are you now bringing up stupid things which have long been written?
I'm just giving you what those experts, what those psychologists, what those
they're not experts. They're not experts, and they're liars.
Ayub, did you watch my presentation? Did you watch what I presented?
I did, and I have read what Hamza Zohar said about the Fitrah. I have read about that.
Okay, but I've dealt with all of these things. So if you
I'm just saying those University of Oxford, they concluded that. I'm not the one who's saying it.
Rob, you can't argue with that. We have to say the Shahada, we have the Fitrah, we all believe in gods, and that's it. You can't beat that argumentation line.
Okay, I'm going to send you the link because I don't need to back up this.
We know the link. The link is already, it's on the screen. You don't know.
So okay, fine. So you're saying that what those experts, what those psychologists concluded or came up with is not valid. It's incorrect.
No, it's a lie.
It's a lie, yeah.
It's a lie. They never conducted any research. There is no paper, nothing.
Oh, okay. So you're saying it's a lie. It was never done.
It was never done. That is exactly what I am saying. And I showed that it was never done because there is no such thing as any of these papers.
I apologize. I thought you were saying that what these science, what those experts came up with is incorrect.
Yes, that is correct. That was incorrect what they came up with. They are not experts.
But
they are charlatans and liars. That's all.
But was the study conducted or not?
No.
It was not.
No.
So okay, fine. I thought you were saying that it was conducted, but it's not true.
Why would I say a study was conducted when it was never conducted? No, there was no study ever conducted on the Fitrah or the innate belief of children in God.
Fine, I apologize. I thought you were saying it. Okay, I got it wrong. Okay.
So what has happened there is Muslim apologists have borrowed studies where there was nothing about the Fitrah or anything like that. They've borrowed studies where, as I've just presented, where children were tested. Now, the methodologies that we used are highly questionable. as the philosopher A.C. Grayling pointed out, asking certain leading questions that will give you, will point you to a certain answer is not a scientifically valid method. If I ask you a why question, like if I said to you, Marshall, why did you beat your sister? What are you going to say to me?
Can you repeat that again? I did not hear it.
Certain questions that you ask people are called leading questions. In other words, they are pushing towards a particular outcome. This is not a scientific methodology that is preferred. So if I ask you the question, Marshall, why did you beat your sister? What are you going to respond to me?
I would say I never did it.
Correct. So what is the question? What is the question leading you towards?
Well, it depends. You mean you mean the reason why I say that?
No, my question to you.
Oh well, that's invalid question because it was
correct.
Did it. Yeah.
An invalid question because it's leading to an answer that isn't probably there. What I should say is,
exactly.
Was there any violence in your family today? That would be a better question because it's assuming the outcome. Same as what you guys do when you ask, why is the universe the way it is, or why are we here? You've got to make the argument that there is a why before you can establish that we need to ask that question. If you ask that question to begin with, you're already jumping the gun, and that's what any non-believer will tell you. So never ask why until you can establish that you should be asking a why.
That's
same with the studies.